Hello! You have joined the Script Mistress for scene 22, Writing for the Stage. I am your host, Amber Bosworth, and I wanted to do a special spotlight on playwriting and how it could actually help you with your screenwriting. So, more about like playwriting versus screenwriting, how playwriting can help your screenwriting. This week, well, last week, I had to take a little break there. Last week, a play that I spent about 3 months directing here in my local community went performed for 2 weekends, and it was amazing. And it just really got me thinking that I thought it would be a good time to really talk about playwriting and how. My immersion into that world has really helped me as a screenwriter, and maybe I could give you some really fun tips on how that could help you as well. Now, if you want to stay up to date on podcast events and challenges, get on my mailing list at thescriptmistress.com. I also have this whole episode on video at www.thescriptmistress.com/scene 22 for your enjoyment, along with any free downloads you guys want to have. I have a an outline template, a log line cheat sheet. I even have like a 12-month goals, GOAL worksheet to help you kind of really focus on what you want to do each month. Now, the March Ink to Screen Challenge is open for registration. We actually start next week. I'm so excited. If you're just finding my podcast, I run a monthly short screenwriting challenge where writers get 5 days to write a new 5-page screenplay based on a prompt sent out the first day of the challenge. The winner gets $150, and every writer that submits a completed script gets detailed feedback. This is all included in the $15 entry fee. You can check it all out at thescriptmistress.com/ink to screen. The March challenge runs from the 15th of March to the 19th of March. So next week, Wednesday through Sunday. So sign up now if you want to do that. And if not, we'll be doing this all over again in April. So just pay attention there. Now, both playwrights and screenwriters practice the art of dramatic writing with the same goal in mind: to tell a compelling story that leaves a lasting impact on audiences. The truth is, many screenwriters shy away from playwriting, distracted by the tunnel vision of their familiar medium. Now, that if this is you, you may be missing out on valuable lessons and skills that come with playwriting that can be translated into your next screenplay. Playwriting holds valuable lessons on the very art and nature of dramatic writing and is therefore a fantastic tool to learn from for our budding screenwriters. So, what's the difference between playwriting and screenwriting? Very good question. Although the goals for both mediums are similar, how the writer approaches it is very different. So, some storytelling tools. The most obvious difference is that a play is a live performance, while a film is pre recorded using a camera, then cut together. A film is a visual medium with screenwriting focusing on action, while a play relies heavily on words, with playwriting focusing on dialogue. Now, films may use tools such as shot composition, camera angles, and editing. On stage, these are traded out for stage directions, emotive acting, and theatrical effects. There's a misconception that since plays are confined to a stage, a writer is limited to their storytelling devices. However, thanks to the technological advances of modern day theater, plays can actually utilize many of the same tools as films, or are a lot less cut off by that anymore. That's great. Furthermore, because the leap of imagination is inherent in theater, because the audience knows they're not actually in the play setting, the possibilities actually open up. This encourages the writer's imagination. If a play is at sea, how can this be represented on stage? If there is a crowd of hundreds of people, how can this be presented without hundreds of actors? Using these playwriting tools to tell your story can be very empowering for any type of writer. As a screenwriter, you may be stuck in the comfort zone of storytelling for the screen. However, switching your story to the stage can unlock new ways of telling that same story in a more effective way. It challenges you to think of the visual implications for what you are writing and how that can best and most imaginatively be represented. Play formatting. Having a universal script format helps a writer express their story while making it digestible for the reader. Now, when you look at a screenplay, action takes up a large chunk of the pages. On the other hand, pages from a stage play are covered in dialogue with very little action written through there, or blocking as it's called. Being fluent in writing both action and dialogue will strengthen your overall skill as a storyteller. The format used for playwriting may vary depending on the writer, but commonly you'll start by establishing the settings, time periods, character descriptions, and synopsis. Plays are broken up by acts and scenes. The beginning scene should be followed by a description of the setting and any activity happening at Rise. So I have a little bit of a sample from Doubt, a parable. Right now, I mean, you can't, if you're just listening to the podcast, you can't really see it, but really they write out setting and St. Nicholas, a Catholic church and school in the Bronx, New York, 1964. Under that, at Rise. A priest, Father Flynn, in his late 30s, in green and gold vestments, gives a sermon. He is working class from the Northeast. Now center the character names followed by their dialogue justified to the left. Leave stage directions to a minimum, but justify to the right in italicized parentheses. Softwares like Final Draft, Celtics, and Trelby, have playwriting templates that make formatting easier. So doubt, play structure, many plays and films both follow the 3-act structure. So, and then getting back to format too, I know a lot of screenwriters, a lot of beginning screenwriters struggle a lot with the formatting of a screenplay where an actual play, a theater play, really has no specific rules. I mean, they just kind of have some guidelines. It's a lot less stringent than a screenplay is. But getting back to the 3-act structure. Now, we all know the 3-act structure is a model used in narrative fiction that divides a story into 3 parts, often called the setup, the confrontation, and the resolution. Traditionally, acts are used to break up the story and follow and allow intermissions. However, in modern plays and films, acts go about unseen by the audience. Acts are broken up differently depending on the type of play or film. Usually try to find a good natural break, especially in a play when you have them sitting there for 2 hours. You want to give them a little bit of a break. In playwriting, the length of the play will change the structure. For example, 10-minute plays and 1-act plays don't follow the 3-act structure necessarily. Other types, such as full-length plays and musicals, primarily do. Scenes make up the acts of the play. Scenes in playwriting are often left to a minimum. One act may only be comprised of one scene, especially if you're not really changing the location. In comparison, films have much shorter scene lengths that will only last for a few minutes. Therefore, screenplays are compiled of many more scenes. That, of course, is a generalization, and many plays, in fact, contain very short scenes. You can see the work of Carol Churchill, for example. What is important to learn from scenes in plays is their functionality. What is this scene adding to the overall picture of the story, and is it as efficient as possible in doing so? So, how does playwriting help screenwriting? I broke these down into a couple of sections. So, character. Playwriting is character driven. Screenwriting is plot driven most of the time. When writing a play, the size of the stage and the budget can affect how many characters are written into the story. Often, stage plays have a limited cast of characters. Therefore, the characters must be complex and developed. After all, having too many characters on stage can muddy the performance and make it difficult for audiences to distinguish one from the other. Also, having fewer, more memorable characters can help audiences make emotional connections that otherwise wouldn't have been possible. Playwrights use the characters to drive the story forward. They often focus on personal transformations or relationships. For example, in Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot, Estragon and Vladimir are two everymen who do a lot of nothing throughout the play. On top of that, the simple dialogue between both characters seems pointless. So, what makes this play so popular? Each character represents a piece of humanity. Estragon, I know I'm saying that wrong, and Vladimir, the everyman. Pozo, a man with a false sense of control. Lucky, repressed and burdened. Boy, Godot's messenger. This mixed with the absurdist elements makes for a character driven play rooted in deeper meaning revolving around the human condition. Dialogue. Playwriting requires a lot of attention to dialogue. It's a device used to convey information and reveal more about a character. Dialogue should be intentional and meaningful. One way playwrights do this is by using subtext. Now, and that's a huge difference. I know we focus a lot. In screenwriting with dialogue, but in a play with the constraints of maybe being in just one location, dialogue serves really, really more as the storytelling device, even more so, because we can't really see what's going on in their head. We can't see maybe doing a flashbacks, montages. Those become a little bit more difficult and devices that aren't normally used within playwriting. So, subtext is any content of a creative work which is not announced explicitly by the character or author, but is implicit or becomes something understood by the observer of the work as the production unfolds. Using subtext is much more engaging than a character expressing exactly how they feel. Because really, how often do we do that? If we're not like in the therapist office. Like I feel this. Now, in screenplays, the action shows us how a character feels. However, in a stage play, it's the dialogue that typically shows us how a character feels. And of course, the interpretation of the director and the actors portraying that on the stage as well. Asking questions about what a character wants or what they care about can help to find your character's voice. This relates back to making your characters complex, developed, and distinguished. Therefore, if you know your character's style of speaking, your dialogue will flow with a natural pace. Very nice. Dialogue can be one of the most difficult aspects for a writer to grasp. If you can write dialogue for a stage play, you can write it for a screenplay. Dialogue in plays might often seem surplus, but it's in fact the sharpest tool the playwright has. That is so strong. And if dialogue is something that you struggle as a screenwriter, maybe taking a little bit of a shift and trying to write a play actually might help your dialogue within your screenplay. Another aspect, symbolism. Now, this is a device used to add deeper meaning in the context of your story. It's both poetic and thoughtful and gives the audience a chance to add their own interpretation of the story. On stage, everything has a purpose. In fact, every prop, spoken word, and movement adds something to the story. For example, Paula Vogel's Indecent opens with the cast of characters dancing while ashes spill out from their clothing. Projected behind them, from ashes they rise, symbolizing the resurrection of Yiddish theater. In the end, the ashes take on a new meaning when the play comes full circle. As a director and actor, the blocking, because there's not a lot of blocking when you actually look at some of our of the plays. We don't have a lot of blocking in there unless it's very intentional. You leave that up to the director, because you never know, like if you're making it for a specific space, you never know where it's being performed. It could be performed in a theater in the round with the audience all wrapped around them, so they have to make allowances and changes to support whatever platform they are going to be using it. These small yet powerful symbols add so much unspoken meaning to the story while creating an engaging and unique experience for the audience. In thinking of the dramatic power of symbols, think of how this can be replicated on screen. Theater shows the depths that small pieces of imagery can plunge. Dramaturgy. I had to look that up to say that. Dramaturgy is the study of dramatic composition and the representation of the main elements of drama on the stage. Stage plays have used dramaturgy as early as the 18th century. It's a unique idea to playwriting and practiced by every role involved in the theatrical process. A playwright will use dramaturgy to identify what is and isn't working. This includes looking at structure, pacing, characters, dialogue, plot, and more. It uses these elements to assure a deeper meaning behind the work. It also uses them to assure that the intentions behind each element are clear. In the theater, an individual titled the dramaturg is responsible for upholding the dramaturgy. They are in charge of making the deeper connections between the written word, actors, and audiences. Although the playwright and the dramaturge are two separate entities of the theater, they work closely together with the same goal in mind. Their goal is to piece together all the dramatic elements of a production into a meaningful, productive storytelling experience. Understanding dramaturgy and the role it plays in playwriting will better equip you with the skills to analyze your own screenplay in a way you haven't thought about before. So, a good question. Is your idea a play or a film? Writers are constantly generating new ideas and stories to tell. Sticking to one medium can be confining. Your idea may flop as a screenplay, but have you thought about making it into a stage play? Consider all the traits of playwriting and screenwriting we've gone over. Which elements of stage or screen will best fit your story? Does your story rely heavily on action sequences or is it dialogue driven? Is it primarily about internal conflict or external conflict? The former might be better suited for the screen, for example, whilst the latter might work compellingly on stage. Think about how you want your audience to experience your story. Stage plays have an exclusivity and intimate element in which each live performance is never exactly the same. However, watching a film on the big screen is a visual experience like no other. Added with a packed audience manifests feelings of unity and inclusion. Overall, think of how you see your story. Interrogate what is at the core of your intention and whether stage or screen is the better vessel. Now, playwright to screenwriter. There's no doubt that trying out playwriting will result in better screenwriting. Just the practice alone of writing will strengthen your skills as a screenwriter. Stepping into a new and unfamiliar territory can be intimidating for anyone. For inspiration, keep in mind all the brilliant screenwriters who started their careers as playwrights. It's no coincidence that their storytelling abilities carried beautifully over to the screen. So, in summary, what's the difference between playwriting and screenwriting? I think the main difference is that a film is a visual medium with screenwriting focusing on action, while a play relies heavily on words and playwriting focuses on dialogue. How does playwriting help screenwriting? Playwriting teaches the value of character driven pieces, quality dialogue, symbolic storytelling, and idea of dramaturgy. When a screenwriter understands and masters these ideas of storytelling, they gain a new perspective on their craft. Now, is your idea a play or a film? Consider all the traits of playwriting and screenwriting we've gone over above. Which elements of stage or screen will best fit your story? Does your story rely heavily on action sequences or is it dialogue driven? What is the balance of internal versus external conflict? Think about how you want your audience to experience your story. Stage plays have an exclusivity element in which each live performance is never exactly the same. However, watching that film on the big screen is a visual experience like no other. One experience is exciting in its transience, one in its form and permanence. So I added a link to where I got a lot of this article. I really loved going through this and taking from my own experience as well because as a playwright as well, I've had some stuff done on stage and that is an incredible experience because you actually do get to see in a movie in your script, you really, I mean, besides all the remakes, you really only get that one chance to really make it right. Where stage plays, like different states, different countries, can be interpreted in so many different ways. And I think that's so rewarding as a writer. So if you're having problems with screenwriting, maybe give it a little bit of a chance. Now, my writing action for you this week, I mean, I don't have a download specific for this. Now, if you've ever considered writing a play, think about ideas that would work as a short play. Maybe try your hand at writing a 10-page play. What are some things you like to see on stage if you've been? Write these down and consider going to your local community theater to watch the action on stage. Every single town, most towns in our country have a community theater, whether big or small, or even just seeing somebody on stage doing comedy. This is also a good opportunity to get to know the actors in your area. I know as writers, we can be a little isolated, and I think this would be a good opportunity to get to know those people because you never know who you might want to read your script. Your screenplay or your stage play, to get some better ideas. It's really good to get to know the creative people, even if they're not writers in your community. Feel free to share some of your thoughts. Like, what are some things that you tried? What is something that really helped you with your writing or playwriting? Or if you've ever written a play, that'd be great. Share your thoughts on our Facebook page, the Ink to Screen Facebook page, or email me at amber@thescriptmistress.com to get extra help. Now, don't forget about the monthly screenwriting challenge. March is open for registration. You could win $150 and definitely get feedback on your writing, all for just $15. Check it all out at thescriptmistress.com/ink to screen. Thank you so much for listening or watching. I truly value any feedback you have. If you have an idea for a podcast that might help, you can email me at amber@thescriptmistress.com. Like and follow this show wherever you are listening or watching. Talk soon. And until then, happy writing.